Today, I want to tell you the story of two very different saints, men who lived centuries apart, but whose lives still speak to us today. Their names are Saint Jerome and Saint John the Foreigner. Jerome was born in a small town which is now Croatia in the 300s. As a boy, he loved reading more than anything else. While other children played outside, Jerome sat with his scrolls, curious about every word he read. One day, his teacher asked him, "Jerome, don't you ever get tired of books?" And Jerome replied, "How could I? Every book is a doorway, and the more I learn, the more I want to know." As he grew up, Jerome became one of the most learned men of his time. But one book mattered to him more than all the others, the Bible. At that time, the Bible was mostly read in Hebrew and Greek, languages that only scholars understand. Ordinary people had no way to read God's word. Jerome thought, "This isn't right. Everyone should hear God's word in their own language." So he made a daring decision. He would spend his life translating the Bible to Latin, the common language of the Roman Empire. Picture Jerome, years later, sitting in a little room in Bethlehem, the very town where Jesus was born. His desk was piled high with scrolls. He worked late into the night by the light of a lamp, carefully checking word after word. A friend once told him, "Jerome, you work too hard. Don't you ever rest?" Jerome answered, "How can I rest when people are waiting to hear God's word?" He could be fiery, even short-tempered at times, but his passion for God's word never wavered. After many long years, Jerome completed his translation, called the Vulgate. For over 1,000 years, this was the Bible people used across Europe. Jerome's life reminds us that when we dedicate our talents, whether it's reading, writing, speaking, or teaching, we can change the world for the better. Now let's move many centuries forward to Egypt, where another holy man lived, Saint John the Foreigner. John was called the Foreigner because he was not from Egypt originally. Sometimes people whispered behind his back, "He doesn't belong here." Being an outsider can feel lonely, but John never complained. Instead, he lived humbly. He fasted, prayed, and chose a simple life. He was not loud or fiery like Jerome. Instead, he showed his faith through quiet acts of love. One day, a poor traveler knocked on his door. "Please, sir," the man begged, "I have nothing to eat." John smiled and welcomed him inside. "Come in, brother. What is mine is yours." He gave him bread, water, and a safe place to rest. Stories spread about John. People said, "This man never refuses the poor. He never turns away a stranger. His kindness and humility spoke louder than any sermon." John's life reminds us that holiness is not only about great deeds. Sometimes it is found in the quiet, hidden ways we show love, feeding the hungry, welcoming strangers, and treating everyone with dignity. Saint Jerome and Saint John the Foreigner were so different. Jerome, the scholar, worked with books and fiery words. John, the humble stranger, worked with kindness and quiet service. But both gave everything to God. Together they teach us this: use your talents, whatever they are, to serve others. Welcome and love those who feel like outsiders. And in everything, keep God at the center. So the next time you open a Bible, remember Saint Jerome, who worked tirelessly so people everywhere could hear God's word. And the next time you see someone who feels left out, remember Saint John the Foreigner, who welcomed strangers as family. Their stories show us that holiness isn't just for the past. It is for today. Through our words, our talents, and our kindness, we too can live like saints. Thank you for listening to the story of Saint Jerome and Saint John the Foreigner. May their lives inspire you to share your gifts, welcome others, and walk with God each day. Goodbye.